we're presenting works of Ukrainian cultural workers and artists. Because they're displaced and in different time zones, we're going to present their work for them. So I will present work of Katerina Yakovlenko, who is a curator, and Eugene Lavrenchuk, who is an opera director. There are QR codes spread around that they have links to a PDF. It's a link to a PDF that will have all the links that of works we're covering today. You can grab it, or you can keep those. So I'll start with Katerina Yakovlenko, and we asked them to record a little message. So here we go. Huh. It's not working. No, there was a video. Okay.
Hi guys, my name is Katya Yakovlenko. I'm Luhansk-born and Kiev-based curator and visual writer, visual culture writer. And last 10 years I was working a lot with the topic of violence. The first and foremost, I was working for my PhD, which is connected to rural and labor history in Ukraine, and especially in Soviet Ukraine, but also last 8 years I was working for different cultural institutions such as Izolyatsiya and the Pinchuk Center, and what I was created articles, books and exhibition which also somehow emphasizes the issue of violence and image of violence. And to me it's really interesting what we really feel when we see such horrific images and images of dead bodies, of death. And today this has become more clear that when you have this war, all the questions between relations of art and violence is become more crucial. We see such many evidence of violence in documented photography, in arts, and we're really trying to answer what power does art have during such events. Is it possible to give voices to minorities? Is it possible to give voices and to make them powerful to vulnerable communities? To me it's so essential, and in my practices I'm always using the feministic approach and trying to look more deeply to social questions and to relation art between arts and politics. Just right before the war we presented the Ukrainian edition of Secondary Archive Project. This is a project initiated by Foundation of Katarzyna Kozyra in Poland, and we created with the help of artists 50 artist statements which was written just before the war and just for this platform. And it was interesting that many of these artists were emphasizing the influences of war, and they directly had attachment to these events. So I think that this is essential to talk about this and to explore this topic, and also it's essential to speak up for Ukrainians who are suffering right now, who are witnessing this war and who really trying to change the situation, trying to give power and subjectivity to many minorities, to many vulnerable groups. And thank you for being interested in this. I'm really thankful to each of you who supports the Ukrainian army and who helps our civilians during these crucial events.
So I met Katerina when she was in New York on a Fulbright, and then she went back to Ukraine, and she resided in Irpin until March. She was able to escape Irpin under the blown up bridge. The picture, this is it, you've seen probably the picture. And she got on a train that was shelled, and while she was on a train to Lviv, her apartment was struck by a Russian missile, and her home is gone now. But she's safe. She's currently in Vienna. She was invited by the Institute of Humanitarian Studies, and she continues to write texts about art. and she's focused more on a book about 1990s Ukraine. She would like to talk about that time of change through the biographies of artists, photographers, and cultural figures. So in 2021, Katerina worked with Pinchuk. Oh, sorry. With Pinchuk Art Center on a show Stone Beats Stone by Nikita Kadan. She was responsible for the historical content, the book, and the public programs. And here are the quotes from the book. Nikita Kadan's work is characterized by several lines. One of them is the connection with unrealized utopian models from the past. Another is the topic of violence and mass casualties caused by political struggles and battles of remembrance in the future. When studying mass killings, historians, anthropologists, and sociologists pay close attention to every detail in all documents, because it is in these details that help to reveal the truth or show fabricated information. Looking at photos, they look at the surrounding landscape, clothes, shoes, faces, anything that can give an understanding of who this person was, what views and social status he or she had. In the artist's works, the context is similarly formed by such details. For example, by cups of a kitchen set deformed by the fire after the artillery shelling of Donbass, or Soviet window grills in form of the sun. These trifles that make up our daily routine were never noticeable until the artist brought them to the gallery and focused on them. Looking at these things, the author illustrates the fine line between our everyday life and cruelty, while the universality and simplicity of the images allows him to expand the issue, revealing our own involvement in history. So this project was in 2021, and the most recent project of Katerina was the Ukrainian version of the secondary archive. She was one of 4 Ukrainian curators who collected 50 texts by women artists from Ukraine from the second half of the 20th century to the present day. This is available online and is an international endeavor. The QR code has the links to the program. The presentation of the project took place on February 23rd, the day before this full-scale invasion. And here I'm quoting Katerina as her statement about the project. It was important for me to gather in this archive women who are engaged in a completely different practices, and I was more interested in how biographies developed at different times. Of course, we could not comprehend all Ukrainian artists. In fact, this project showed that we have a lot of talented authors, and this choice was tyrannical. So among the text of 50 artists, you will find stories of those who call their art political and those who have never talked about politics before. But in their manifestos and speeches, these authors emphasize the constant presence of war and aggression, not only at the front, but also in everyday life. Maria Kulikovskaya, her works remained on the territory of the captured Isolation Foundation in Donetsk. This was an arts foundation that was captured and turned into prison by the Russian forces. The works are considered missing. Oh, no. Okay. Alena Grom, who started taking photos after being forced to leave her home in Donetsk, photography has become a way for her to deal with her own trauma, as well as help those who live in the so-called gray area. Katerina Alayeva is an artist who cannot return home due to war. And lastly, Alevtina Kakidze, who is an artist who lost her mother at a checkpoint. All of these links are accessible in the QR code thing. So next, I will cover Eugene Lavrenchuk, who is an opera director. He was a director of Odessa Opera in Ukraine and is currently in Warsaw. So Lavrenchuk was born in Lviv, where I'm also from. We actually went to the same school. Lviv is the birthplace of Leopold von Sacher-Masoch, who wrote Venus and Furs. So Lavrenchuk studied with the legendary Roman Viktuk and this is a snapshot of Roman Viktuk's play. He studied in Moscow. So Eugene left Russia in protest of the annexation of Crimea, of which he was a vocal critic. In December of 2021, Lavrenchuk was flying to Lviv, where he organized a memorial to his late teacher. His plane transfer in Italy was late, and he checked into a motel. The motel sent his information to the police station, and it turned out that Russia put out an Interpol circular note for his extradition to Russia. The fabricated charges and delays in presenting any evidence landed him in jail in Italy and then house arrest, where he was on February 24th, when the full-scale invasion happened. He won the case and is currently in Warsaw, Poland, working with Opera Wielka Narodowa in Warsaw and Opera Wielka Narodowa in Poznań on a Benjamin Britten Albert Herring opera. This is the statement of Eugene. Thank you.
До війни ми планували реалізувати повністю проєкт «Ля Травіата» за твором Джузеппе Верді в Одеській національній опері. Цей проєкт більш ніж просто постановка. Це цілий такий кластер, який полягає на і постановці, на проведенні міжнародного форуму оперного наукового, і запис циклу лекцій, і запис реалізація телеверсії професійної, студійної. Ми зробили майже все. Ми зробили виставу, яка зайняла всі передові місця на конкурсах, зайняла всі можливі премії. Я особисто отримав державні премії 2. І вистава викликала дуже великий резонанс у преси, у критиків, була дуже позитивною. Але, на жаль, через війну ми не встигли домонтувати телеверсію. Ми навіть зробили телеверсію запис, ми зробили з багатьох камер, з дронів, зробили запис вистави. І навіть дозйомку робили окремо в окремі дні без глядачів. Але, на жаль, ми не встигли, тому що там просто перепинилося фінансування, домонтувати вже такий постпродакшн цієї вистави. То саме стосується вистави Ріголетто, яка була запланована, вона навіть не почалася репетиція, але це був міжнародна копродукція між Нідерландами і Україною. І так само, як Травіата, планувалася і постановки, телеверсія, і запис моїх лекцій на цю тему. Зрештою, про Травіату вони записані також біля 30 годин матеріалу, який я зробив таке науковий цикл лекцій про Травіату, про цю оперу, про партитуру Джузеппе Верді. І тільки залишилось домонтувати, доробити постпродакшн цього циклу лекцій, який, сподіваюсь, ми обов'язково зробимо або під час війни, тому що весь матеріал в нас вже є, або після її завершення, коли ми отримаємо якесь фінансування. До війни ми планували реалізувати повністю проєкт «Ля Травіата».
Okay, so the La Traviata was staged in Odessa National Opera when Lavrenchuk was the director there. The main idea in staging was it's a concept where all the actions are 1 second before the death of the heroine. So he imagined the heroine as weird. He imagined the heroine as a soul in a cocoon near a river Styx. All the heroes, all the actions happen between the consciousness. That is why everything in the opera is gray. He tried to remove any individuality of any of the performers. Everything is collapsible, so all the staging, all the areas has this ghostly collapsible view, and all the architecture becomes cloth and flies away at the end of each scene. The next project that was in pre-production before the war and was only possible, they only made costumes for it and developed costumes and couldn't do they didn't even do the practice or staging of it, was Rigoletto and, oh, yes. So this was a collaboration between the Netherlands and Ukraine. It was supposed to be a dual country collab opera. So they got to the developing of the costume stage, and some slides are not showing. and it got as far as that. So the focus of the Regoletta was supposed to be the fragmentation of space and fragmentation of classical architecture. It was stuck midway, and the only thing completed was the costumes. Because Eugene works on the go, the pre-planning is minimal, and the thread of subcontext of the opera gets figured out during rehearsals. This project is not completed and is awaiting the end of the war. Is that a video? Yes.
На жаль, ми не всі проекти змогли реалізувати через початок війни в Україні, але народилися і нові ідеї, народилися нові проекти. Так, я дуже вважаю на часі, і ми зробимо все, щоб реалізувати це не в Україні, тому що там зараз це неможливо, а за кордоном. Це може бути Європа, це може Америка, але йдеться про реалізацію опери модерністського українського композитора Бориса Рятошинського «Золотий обруч», The Golden Ring, який є за твором Івана Франка Захар Беркут. Це патріотична тема, але музика модерністична, вона нова і вона дуже класно показує сучасну, модернову, прогресивну Україну.
That's the end of my presentation.
На жаль, ми не всі проекти.
Yes, hello everyone. I'll be talking about a friend of mine, Pavel Yurov, who is a documentary theater director, performer, writer, and videographer. In 2014, after participating in the Maidan Ukrainian Revolution, he went, and the first sign of Russian occupation started to surface up. He decided to go to his hometown in Donbass to check it out for himself, what was going on there. And on the second day, walking on the street, he was abducted by Russian soldiers and the criminals, local criminals. He was brutally beaten, tortured, and kept in the cell for 70 days until Ukrainian forces liberated the town. And that experience, as you can imagine, profoundly affected his work. Which became continuous exploration of not only reality which people face in these instances, but how we can relate to them and what could be a way out from this absurd and brutal situations. So So in this play called Silence, 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 Please, soldier is hunted by, coming back from the war, he's hunted by the kind of enigmatic and constantly shifting presence of something that either can be his enemy or his anima or his shadow or just life itself. And the reality becomes never plain and always kind of double-edged. And the only way out from it is an ability to make decision, like every day, every step decision that is only connects him to the real life and real events. In this play, also a real story about a group of scientists from Crimea who are archaeologists. And they get together on the stage for the real supper with real food and wine. And during a couple of hours of their conversation, it becomes clear that the history of Crimea has actually nothing to do with Russian claims of Russia historically owning the peninsula. And in real life, it's kind of like displaying the real story of this group of scientists who, after occupation of peninsula, moved to the mainland of Ukraine, parted away with their own lives, just to find themselves back again together after a couple of years, because all of them, independent of each other, became activists and social advocates against the occupation, because they just simply couldn't exist with the absurdity of the occupation, with the strangeness of it. And it will always hunt them until the land will be deoccupied and will be freed from this sort of parallel life. So the last play I will, it's okay, I will talk about briefly is the history is, it's a performance about the history, 100 years history of Donbas region. And it's aesthetic, which is, were kind of artificially created by Soviet state previously, and then endured after the collapse of Soviet Union by people who wanted to manage the region, by oligarchs, Ukrainian oligarchs, and now by Russian occupiers, because it's a very surreal kind of story about miners and the place where they live in Donbas region that kind of could never get out from this like theater stage in a way into the real life that is happening now around them. They constantly are forced to live in this like very strange, like artificially induced aesthetic, and that affects also how they think and feel. And now I'll play a conversation that I had with Pavlo about what's going on in Ukraine now. He's presently documenting the war and interviewing people who got in from Bucha and other places for international media. So if I can.
Was difficult for me. I mean, my practice, I would say, changed a lot in terms of the focus, because before that I was more concerned with some kind of universal or I don't know, dramatic issues in I mean, it was not like Romeo and Juliet kind of things, but it was still stories from with different how would you call it, I don't know, common issues, whatever. But since that, for me, it became obvious and clear that the war is the most important thing, and art, unfortunately, is not able to do anything with the war, except at the present moment now, I understand that documentary filmmaking is probably the most appropriate kind of art, which could go along, so to say, with the warfare. Yeah, and for me, the events that are happening now, it's a logical development of what happened in what started in 2014. And it's like I feel like nowadays everyone, most of the people are in the condition which I was in during the last 8 years. Basically, I did not consciously think about that in such a way, but I think I have understood, and I have worked with the theater as the tool to communicate this subject. And it was specifically difficult because number one is that it's difficult to tell other people something that they don't really want to hear, and invite them for the experience which they don't really want to have. After the first month, and when the Russians retreated from around Kyiv area, I've started to think about pursuing some artistic practice, and specifically with the people working with media and talking to people who were just witnesses of the horrible things in Bucha, in Irpin. I've noticed certain performativity in the way how they communicated things. And now I understand, I can say that now in this conversation, I understand that this performativity is also related to their experience. When we interviewed people in Bucha, they also, just in regular life, maybe not regular life, but after all these events, but just in reality, we're talking, repeating statements over and over again. And that reminded me of my performance, but also exposed me some performativity in which could be theatrically, specifically in theater. I come from a very pro-Russian region of Ukraine, from Donbass originally. I was born in Antracyt in Luhansk region, and I've lived here for 16 years, first 16 years of my life. And I have had like a deep connection with the Russian culture and such. And but I've been to theater residency in Germany, in Heidelberg in 2015. And at some moment I've realized that all the process, the activities in the regular life are the same. Like there are shops, there is police, there are hospitals, the people have work, jobs, there are kindergartens, there are families and so on. But at the same time, the functionality, the way it functions, the way this process are being conducted is somehow different from what I'm used to. And after reading this specific news about the children from Mariupol as being taken to Russia, and their directive to create some kind of summer camps or something to teach them Russian because they don't speak very good, they don't speak Russian fluently or something like that. I've realized that basically, and I've thought about that before, and for me, Russia and the Soviet Union also looked like the concentration camp structures, basically, and learning these news about these summer camps and so on, I realized that basically that's the nature of the Russian nation, of the Russian Federation. It is an army where they mimic the how do you say, the living conditions of the peaceful nations or of the peaceful population, to pretend that they are somehow a common state which just has an army, but it's actually an army which has certain inside institutions which imitate the actual life. Because also the way they twist the information, making statements like Russian, for instance, Russian sportsmen were not allowed to participate in some championship and contest because of their nationality. But that's not true. They're not allowed to participate because their country is conducting a war, not because they are Russians, but because Russians conduct a war. It's important, I think, to make a reassessment and reevaluation of what Russian culture is, and to take it not from the perspective which is proposed and suggested by the Russia, but from different perspectives. In this case, we are dealing with very specific terrorist state of Russia, which is basically one of the many manipulations which they apply in the so-called informational war, is denying the political aspect of any kind of activity. They're trying to say that sports is outside of the politics, the religion is outside of the politics, the culture is outside of the politics. Meanwhile, they promote their values, they promote their statements with sports, with culture, with religion, with everything. So everything is political, the body is political, personal is political, everything is political. And if someone tells you that it is not, then this someone is just pursuing own political goal to keep you away from your political statement. For me, in all of the events, it is incredible how it's an incredible how do you say neighboring between the horrible, disgusting, ugly, scary things, and at the same time it's the expression of the beauty, love, empathy, compassion, and all the high-spirited emotions that people who barely knew each other could feel, and how they could act towards each other. The most important thing is life, human life, animal life, plant life, everything which is developing, which is growing, which is living. And yeah, and it's all connected to this, and the feelings that people have towards each other, it still, for me, stays the most important thing.
Sorry for the bad connection. He was hiding from the, there was sirens during the conversation, and so the internet was not perfect. So I pass the microphone to Anton.
Hello. Okay. Can I have this thing? Thanks everybody for coming. I will tell about my very close friend, Stas Turina. I know Stas from 2011 or 10, like for a while, like more than 10 years. We used to be in one collective also for a while. He's very just close person to me, and also I think he's a great artist. He's a writerist, thinker, writer. I think I will put the video of him like 3 minutes, and then I will try to tell something about stuff he's doing.
Hello everyone. My name is Tas Turina. I am artist and curator. I am living in Kyiv, and from 24th of February I am here. During these 2.5 months we help different people. Mostly I help people with disabilities, because usually I work at studio for artists with Down syndrome and without. From 24th of February I stay at Kyiv with my wife, and we work together, for example, at psychoneurologic house for living for people with disabilities. Also we help different groups of people with foods, hygiene, sanitary needs. And of course we try to support our army in different ways, because if we don't help our army, my recording now don't happen. Yeah. And I am artist, yes, and also at free time I think how must change art now in this world, because Adorno said that poetry impossible after Auschwitz, and here we think that art already changed, but we don't know exactly how it describe. Yes. How you can support us? You can read more about Ukraine. You can talk with your friends about Ukraine, and you can find some initiatives. Every Ukrainian now some initiatives who support army, who support medicine, who support cities, hospitals, who support destroyed villages, and how our president say, I repeat, you can choose some family, some people, some institution, some city, some school, and help it from hand to hand. You can do it on the level your initiative, your company, your city, I don't know, and more. Greetings from Kyiv, guys and girls. Sorry for my English. Maybe I some told wrong, but almost sorry. Yes.
Almost sorry. This is Stas. Yeah, this is the collective. I'm also part of Open Group. And yeah, that's how I know Stas. We founded this collective, co-founded with like 4 other members. And I think, yeah, because like we were talking about this, I will tell about like few things that Stas is doing, and he asked me to tell about this Venice project we did in 2018. Basically, you know, like the war is happening in Ukraine for the last 8 years. Like this last thing is just the second phase, or like the real like hot phase that happened in like what, almost 3 months, but more than 2 months, right? But the war in Ukraine is happening for 8 years. And in 2018, we did we did this project, The Shadow of a Dream Cast upon Giardini della Biennale. Yeah, like this collective that Stas was also part of, we created this project with the idea to fly the biggest and heaviest aircraft in the world over the Giardini, the gardens in Venice, where the you know those like gardens where the pavilions are located. Yeah. So what I really like about this project, you can really read it, like understand it, like from 3 sentences. The biggest craft, the biggest aircraft. It's built in Ukraine. Was built in 1889. It's like built in one sample, and it was also, yeah, I will show you this. Yeah, this is the aircraft. It was built like to carry Soviet space shuttle, like Soviet rockets. Yeah, you can read the thing, and the idea was to put the archive of all Ukrainian artists, as it says there, will contain a digital directory of all living Ukrainian artists. Basically, everybody who applied. It was, in the end, it was like something 1,140 for the artists, and we put this. Yeah, this is the footage from the videos we did. So we put this. Okay, it's not here, but there you can see the hard drive, right? This is already the footage of the pavilion. This is the hard drive with the directory installed in the plane. And so yeah, the idea was pretty simple, to fly the biggest aircraft over the Giardini and just to cast a shadow on the opening day of the Venice. It was kind of about a lot of things, right? But it was about like the Ukrainian underrepresentation, like culture underrepresentation in like abroad, in European context, in a world context, you can say. There were like a lot of stuff. Also, it was about the interesting fact, I have to say, I mean, here probably people will know. In 2018, MoMA published the book about Eastern European art, and there were like different, like the team of curators from MoMA went to visit all countries in Eastern Europe, but they skipped Ukraine. They didn't go to Ukraine. They didn't go to Belarus. And Moldova too. Okay, and guess what? Now there is a war and it was back in 2018. It was really safe in Ukraine. I mean, the military actions were happening something on like 2% of the territory. Anyway, so they just skipped Ukraine, they skipped Belarus, Moldova, and what we have now, right? Like Belarus is basically de facto occupied. There is war in Ukraine. And there is like this unresolved situation with Transnistria in Moldova, right? So was it like that book, that just, that attitude was one of the reasons like for all this, like casting a shadow, just like showing like that we are there. At the same time, there's like Ukraine, like even presentation of Ukraine on all this like world events, like art events, always was something like weird and awkward. Like the first one, the first representation of Ukraine at Venice Biennial was very prophetic. It was just because Ukraine, like in 1995 or something, like really young, independent country, we didn't have much money. The pavilion itself was made in the huge military Soviet tent. Can you imagine, like in Giardini? In a way prophetic, yeah. Anyway, yeah, time. Okay, cool. So that's the pavilion, and that's what happened with the plane in 2000, like 2 months ago, the first days of the occupation. This plane was built like in one sample, like one. and it's called Mria, which means dream. It's also about, you know, so for Ukraine it was like very symbolical thing, like very symbolic thing. Anyway, yeah, that's why it was important. Stas is always interested in this like inclusivity of all people in art, about like just people doing art. He co-founded also this Atelier Normalno, which is the studio who works with people, with artists with Down syndrome and without, actually. So it's like a studio where like artists are working together in Kiev. They became pretty important and prominent part of Kiev art scene in last 3-4 years, I would say. Yeah, they did a lot of really kind of big projects in the institutions, tightly working with the Goethe Institute and also with a lot of, I know for sure, with a lot of Germany, the same kind of residents and institutions that work in the same field. Yeah, that's this person, Valentin, during the Russian occupation, Valentin lives with his family 40 kilometers from Kiev, which was occupied for a month by the Russian army. And this person just disappeared for like 4 weeks from all the others. Stas didn't know what happened to him, like all the Atelier Normalno didn't know what happened to him, but he's alive, he's okay, he's good now. Now he went to the residency to Germany, actually, with 2 other of the residents of Atelier. I just like the approach of Stas to the stuff, and this like different type of art. I don't know, this is the project, kind of small project he's doing for last like 3 years. It doesn't really much correlated with the war, but it shows a little what kind of person Stas is and what he's doing. So this is Jan. This is not Stas. This is Jan. And Jan was why he was, because he passed away like 3 years ago, and he was just a hippie, old Soviet hippie, who was like traveling around the folk and musical festivals like all the year and just selling this embroidery butterflies. And Jan was from the town from the Stas town. And yeah, and he wasn't like a professional artist or something, but he was doing this all his life. Like during the Soviet Union, during the independent Ukraine, he died when he was like 60 or something. And Stas just decided to kind of, what's happened? Yeah, I don't know, it's froze. Back. Stas decided to kind of continue his thing, you know, like he's also embroidering butterflies instead of him right now. And how it a little correlates with the war, just right before the war, like 4 months ago or something, in this January and December, Stas started doing these butterflies with different types of blood, you know, like soldiers have. I think they're really interesting, right? And he actually selling them for really not big money on his Instagram. You can support him or something. This is like where Stas lives now. He stayed in Kiev with his wife for the time of occupation till now. He's still there now. This is his garden. This is like a mile ago from his garden. The Kiev was bombarded time. Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's Kiev right now. And so what are they doing now? This is Katya Lipkin, his wife, also very prominent, like Ukrainian artist. They are volunteering at Pavel Psychiatric Hospital in Kiev right now during the war, because like an internat, like a huge facility of people where like mental disabled people are living. They were evacuated from the suburbs of Kiev to Kiev, and now Stas is helping them there, volunteering. That's the thing they're working on. Like you see the paintings, la la la. The last thing, very important, let's just pay attention on this. This is basically the last work Stas did. He made this, in the first days of war, he published this Testament, incomplete. You can read it. If it's, yeah. If I will just tell in like few words that maybe you don't know, but State Tretyakov Gallery is the biggest, one of the biggest galleries in Moscow. The same, and Contemporary Art Garage, the biggest contemporary art center in Moscow. And basically, what he, yeah, I think you got the idea. And that was his last work. After that, as he told me, he can't really do much art right now. And yeah, that's the story, and I don't have any more time, but thanks all you for coming.
If you have any questions, we have 5 minutes. If not, yeah, Adrian.
Yeah.
This is just kind of an arbitrary question, but watching about the plane, if there's any idea to use the plane for some kind of project, for some kind of piece, now.
There is no plane anymore.
But it's destroyed the remains of the plane.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it's just there. There is no ideas. Nobody really, I mean, maybe someday, somehow. I mean, the president said that one of the goals is to rebuild the plane, to build one more at least. There is one unfinished, I know, at this factory. There is one unfinished, but it's unfinished still till 90s. The thing is, this kind of huge plane is not really even needed in contemporary world. It was doing like 30 or something like transportation each year. But like in COVID time, it was very like in need. And it was like, it was bringing here medical supplies from China to US. So in kind of those like emergency times, yeah, from China to US. In emergency times, this is like a kind of aircraft was
No, but
very in it.
the factory itself was destroyed.
The factory itself was also like partially destroyed. It was bombed like
nothing is left, basically.
not nothing, but it's a really big factory.
And one other question, which this reminds me of, this last slide, is what's the relationship of Ukrainian artists to, if you can speak on it, it might be sensitive, but to the Russian art museums? What's the Ukrainian artists' current relationship with the museums? Are the museums being supportive in any way right now? Even though they're in Moscow and they're oligarch owned?
I mean, they didn't reply to him. You know, did this? Like,
no reply at all.
He got some after reply from the Tretyakov State Gallery, but the garage didn't. I think the garage closed its facilities right now. That's what I heard. But also, I don't want to.
Yeah, I understand.
There's just so much. Questions? Yeah.
Thank you so much for this presentation and for representing the artists that you've shared with us. My question for you is, what do you personally think the role of art is now and within the last 8 years, either your own thoughts or through your conversations with the artists?
I didn't hear you. Could you
Oh, you didn't hear. What are your thoughts on the role of art right now and in the last 8 years in Ukraine? Either your own thoughts or conversations you've had with artists. What role does art play in the sharing of art right now?
Well, actually, my conversation with Pavlo was kind of about that. From what I felt from him is like it's very personal, but basically war affected everyone in Ukraine. But he was kind of very optimistic actually, and as Stas was also. Art does have a role. It cannot prevent horrific atrocities, but of course it's a way, it's a way of life and how you experience situations, and you can also find strange solutions to events that you have experienced. So no one, from my kind of conversations with people, no one really says art is irrelevant to the situation. That surprised me actually. Yeah, because here we are constantly wondering, why are we doing all this? But in Ukraine, it seems like it's needed. It's like a way of processing things and communicating them. So, yeah.
I also think that because the Russians are targeting Ukrainian cultural institutions, like they hit the Museum of Skovoroda, Ukrainian thinker, the Primachenko Museum. They're targeting cultural institutions. They want to destroy Ukrainian culture. So it's very difficult to make art right now. I'm an artist, and I just couldn't do anything. But we have to continue creating work, preserving and creating new culture and new ways of thinking, because we cannot have that. We cannot be destroyed too. So that's been my thinking.
Yes, it's a culture, it's like a hot culture war, not cold one, not in the media, but actually with the bombs. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, if we stop, they win.
So I think we are completely out of time, and yeah, thank you so much, everyone.